All right, hello everybody. Welcome caseworkers across the region. Really happy to have this bi-monthly meeting, especially in the world of COVID. It's always good to be able to interact with everybody and have this little get together. This month meeting, I may have overpacked this meeting in all honesty. We have a lot to discuss, so there is the potential that it's going to run a little bit longer than our one meeting start time. But we have some really important information that we're going to be talking about. In fact, I don't think on one of our regional meetings we've ever talked about some of our internal services that we provide to our clients. I'm sure, like locally, everyone has had that conversation at some point in their chapter. But I want to make sure that we're getting on the same page how we're operating regionally as well. So today we have two guest speakers, one from the casework side, Mark Brotman. Go ahead and you want to wave there, Mark? There we go. And on the DMH side, Ron. Hi, Ron. Today we're going to be talking about how to make a sensitive referral, what sort of things we should be looking for with our clients when making those referrals and handing it off over to DMH. What can we include in the narrative in CAS ourselves, but what should we actually be telling DMH when handing it off? And then also, what DMH is doing, disaster mental health is doing for our clients once they pick it up from there, the conversations they have, and everything that's entailed there. After we talk about DMH, I also want to talk about some of the Flo is going to be temporarily out. She's on vacation, which we all want to make sure that we do get some vacation time in there somewhere, especially when we're dealing with, people with during disasters. So Chris Weiss is going to be taking over, and I would love for Chris to talk a little bit about some of the changes and what to expect while Flo is out. And then finally, we're going to wrap up with some of the updates with RC Care, what I can share with you from for now and the changes to be expected, especially going over a little bit more with Aunt Bertha, because I know I sent out word to all the different coordinators this past month about getting some referrals updated. So I just want to show you how that's going to work out. So without further ado, Mark and then Ron, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I'm Mark Bratman. I've worked for the Red Cross as a volunteer for, I think, about 5 years now, maybe 6. I've done DAT, I've done casework. I have one deployment. Also did disaster services when I worked as social service director for Salvation Army. And that's me.
And Ron?
About 3 years with Red Cross in DMH. After 30 plus careers in clinical social work and banking, as you may have guessed, I don't live year round in Arizona. Our primary home is in a northwest Chicago suburb called Mount Prospect. And we'll actually be headed down this coming Thursday to the Valley for about 5 weeks to do kind of fall cleaning after the summer, dust and all that stuff, and then come back for our 3rd or 4th snowbird season in the Valley. We've owned a place in Mesa for about 23 years, but retired now for a few years, and so we've started to come down for the winter. And I do about I've done, as I say, DMH work both in Chicago on call as well as in Arizona simultaneously. And a couple disasters, a couple deployments, Harvey in 2017 after I first joined up, and the following year in Northern California for the wildfires then. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Sounds like you can also be our spy for the Northern Red Cross and just feed us information like what can we do better based off of information they're doing. Let us piggyback off of some of their procedures as well.
Or the other way, really. I think, as I've shared with Jacob.
I don't know. We like to be the best. So
yeah.
Absolutely. Share and share alike. That goes with our principle of unity and universality, right?
Right.
So today we want to talk about DMH and some of the problems we can have with clients whenever we don't make a sensitive referral. Some of the blowback we've seen in the past. I think we've all been guilty of that at some point in our casework lives, whether with the Red Cross or before, when we say, "Hey, do you want to talk to a shrink?" or something like that. There's a lot of very subtle language that we need to be aware of. So, Mark, do you want to start the conversation?
Yeah. I kind of divided this into 3 sections. I want to talk about listening to people, and I want to also talk about what our responses might be, and then a little bit of discussion about when you don't need to make a referral, because I think that's important as well. I think on the listening side, the kinds of things that I think not only caseworkers, but I think this applies to DAT teams as well. You want to listen for things like hopelessness. Are people depressed or down to the point that that's all they can express to you? So I think the general idea here is to not come at people, but to kind of hear out what they have to say. You're also listening for people who have expressed that they have nowhere to turn. They don't have support, they don't have resources. You're also listening to people who can't focus. They're just not able to concentrate or focus on what's in front of them. You're listening for signs of withdrawal. You're looking for sadness. You're looking for fatigue. Are people so tired and complaining that they just can't sleep or can't get rest? Some of the ways that we respond. For those of you who know Shannon Durham, and when she asks you, "How are you?" it's not the kind of expectation that most of us have when we ask how you are. She really wants to know, and she gets that across. I don't know if you're on the call, Shannon, but she just has a way of asking that question. So I think we need to be conscious of, how we are approaching someone. I think we need to reflect back to people how they're really in a difficult situation. And I think we have to keep in mind that a lot of people that we speak to weren't doing so well to begin with. So, I think we need to establish that what they're feeling in the situation, you've been really up against it here, and, I understand that. So we need to get that across. We need to also kind of assess with people what kind of connections do they have? Are they connected with a church? Are they connected with relatives or friends or neighbors or a landlady or, someone that they may be able to connect with? I like to, when I have a chance, to sort of test for a sense of humor. Is there something that you can laugh about or chuckle about? So some sign of a healthy response. I like to also look at capability. You know, what kind of, what ideas do you have to get through the situation? You know, is there something that you can come up with that will help you through this?
So Mark,
Yeah.
what I hear you referring to are those 3 R's that we train in psychological first aid. I know for some reason psych first aid is not a required edge training for caseworkers, but it is for DAT. And it really does cover a lot of what you're referring to, the how clients are responding, what their resiliencies are, and risk factors. So just going over that, like chuckling, testing their humor, like seeing how they're responding to that, sounds like a little bit with that category. Could you help with giving some of the some of the examples you've given before? Can you help me with connecting the dots as far as which of those 3 R's you're testing when you're trying to practice these active listening skills?
Review for me what the 3 R's are.
Yeah.
It's not reading. It's not reading, writing, and arithmetic. So.
Risk factors, reactions, and resiliency. I put it into the chat box as well.
Okay. What do you mean by connecting the dots here, Jacob?
So like you were mentioning, you're testing out their humor. You see if they're lighthearted to see how their reactions are. If they're, you were talking about if they're able to stay focused, how are they reacting to that trauma? You said about connecting them with their support groups, like when do you do, like that sounds like you're testing their resiliency. What sort of coping mechanisms? Do they have hobbies that they're still engaging with? Do they have a routine? All that sounds like resiliency. How do you, so some of those examples that you were giving, and then risk factors like, you know, what in their life before the fire was already a burden for them that you're still testing out to see how they're handling it. Could you help me connect the dots there?
Well, I can give you some examples. One of my current clients is severely mentally ill. Yet, the very first time that I spoke with him, he had had a fire on the weekend, and I spoke with him on Monday. He had already, by 10 o'clock in the morning, had already spoken with his case manager. He had spoken with the landlord of his apartment complex. So he was showing, despite his background, despite his mental illness, was showing that kind of resiliency. So even though he has some risk factors, he also has some positive things about him that, you know, he may not have necessarily needed a DMH person to talk with him. You know, he had, he's got those contacts in his life that he was able to talk to. He also, when I asked him about basic needs, he said he needed some clothing. So I said, you know, I'll come up with some referrals and send them to you. And he said, well, you know, I'm a big guy, and Omar the tent maker doesn't really like to part with his clothes. So, you know, he had a little bit of a sense of humor. Every time we talk now, we talk about Omar the tent maker, and we have a chuckle over that. So, you know, there's, again, some of that resiliency, some ability to step out of the crisis situation that he's in, and to be able to joke about it. That's the kind of thing that that I'm testing for when I speak with a client.
Excellent. And then two questions. One, what are some of the risks that you may run if you inappropriately refer DMH? And then when you do decide that, you know what, this is a good case to refer DMH, how do you handle that referral?
Yeah, I think it's weighing all of those factors, the sort of the positive and the negative. You know, yes, there are maybe risk factors, but this person has some resources, has some sense of humor, has some contacts with people in his life. And the other part of that is when kind of the negative outweighs the positive, and there are kind of a preponderance of risk factors and lack of resources, kind of inability to step out of that, you know, then my approach is likely to be, you know, listening to what you're saying. I think it sounds like maybe you could, it would be helpful to have somebody talk to you about some of this. If I get some kind of response like, yeah, I would be likely to say something like, you know, we have some people, some really good people that could give you a call. They're counselors and they're really kind people. Would you like somebody like that to call you? 9 times out of 10, people are going to say yes. When approached, you know, kind of in that way, it's not like you're accusing them of being crazy or, you know, really so far out there that they need somebody to talk to, but it's just, you know, maybe this will be helpful for you.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're tying the concern to the situation, not directly to the person. I heard you say stuff like, you know, do you want someone to talk to you about this, about specifically the situation you're going through?
Right. Right. You know, be specific about it. And, you know, I've often thought that mental health diagnoses should be based on function rather than labels, so that you're kind of looking at a person where they're functioning at that very moment. And if, again, that preponderance of evidence says that they may need to talk with someone else, you know, on top of what resources they have.
I also noticed that you avoided saying the words mental health. You said counselor. Any other, you know, was that intentional, or are there other red flag words that you tried to avoid?
Yeah, that's very intentional. I think right or wrong, and Ron, you may want to talk about this too, but I think there's still a stigma about using the term mental health, particularly, and I'm thinking about my mentally ill client who we don't talk about illness. We don't talk about his diagnosis. We don't talk about any of that. You know, we're just kind of talking about where he is at the moment that we're talking. So yeah, I do that purposely, very much so.
Excellent. All right, thank you, Mark. So Ron, going over to you, any comments you want to say about for the advice given to us as caseworkers, what should, like, the things we should be looking out for? And then as far as the words when we're making that sensitive referral?
Yeah, thank you. I think there's probably 3 things I'd like to accomplish in a few minutes here. And the first is to make a suggestion that really reinforces what Mark has been saying, because I think it's great. And the fact that he's on tape, people can go back and listen to it again and again, because he really said a lot. So the first thing is a simple suggestion. The second thing is really just saying, okay, what happens, caseworkers or DAT folks, when you do make that referral? What do we do? What do the DMH people do? And if I'll describe that very, very simply, but I think it really captures it. So that may help you try to understand how you might approach your client as well when you're interacting with them. And the third thing is, since so many of us have been homebound and remotely intervening, I just want to leave you with a story. I happened to be called on a couple weekends ago up here in a river search and rescue that turned into a search and recovery for a couple of families, and I'd like to share some thoughts that I had from that. But I think the first thing is to really reinforce Mark's comments with a simple suggestion that has really helped me greatly in every call I make. Put together in your own mind a standard approach and a standard script for yourself. What are the things you're looking for, and then what would you say in a very generic way that you're comfortable with, and it'll take time to evolve it. But Mark just gave you his standard go-to introduction. He observes what's happening. He makes this, I've been listening what you have to say. It sounds like it might be helpful. He gets a response. So the paradigm, the protocol is make the observation, get the confirmation, and then make the next step of the offer. And if that's the case, and do it in a way that's, again, very soft, very low key, but make it your own. But I would say literally, even if you're just starting out with this, or you seem to get stuck, write it down, write something down so that you can go to it as a script. The Red Cross gives DMH workers scripts to open, interventions, open conversations with. And it's tried and true. You look at it and you say, okay, it's a starting off point, but the first time something different comes your way, you'll go to that script. And if you've got it there, or if you've got it literally even written down on a little cheat sheet or something like that, you can go to that with confidence. So put together a script for yourself that you can carry with you, and talk to more experienced folks. I've worked with a lot of great Arizona caseworkers who make referrals to me, and they're describing to me what they saw and the personalities of the people, where they're at right now. And they, I'm sure, have in their armamentarium an approach, a way to be thinking, and then a way to introduce the service, just like you would with health services. You're making observations, you're getting confirmation, you're making an offer, you get a response, either yes or no or whatever, let me think about it, that sort of thing. So that's the first thing, get a script. The second thing is, what are my objectives in a DMH call? So the way I see it is DMH is really a bridge between the DAT people and the casework people. Between that first immediate, if you think about it in terms of Eric Erickson, his basic safety and security, and I'm okay now, that's casework's job. They're throwing out the life raft and you're getting in the life raft. Where am I going? The casework is saying, well, here, we've got these services here and here and here and here. When people are stuck, when they're overwhelmed, when they're depressed, as Mark was describing all of the characteristics, they don't know where the or is. They don't know where to start looking for those options because of the stress that they're feeling in that immediate moment. They don't have the family support around them. They don't have the neighbors that come together for them. They may be a single mom with small kids, and they're worried about their kids as well as themselves and the future housing, that sort of thing. So that's what the DMH call is trying to do. So when I make the call, I pay a lot of attention to what the CAS information has to say, whether it's the DAT worker, whether it's the caseworker, if the caseworker has made contact already. I usually try and wait if there's a health services referral as well, because obviously health service is a crisis, stress. So I don't want to have to call the person and say, yeah, I'm still waiting for my medication that I need to take in the next 8 hours. Otherwise, I wait until I see that is underway. Generally, I wait for about 18 to 22 hours. So fire at midnight. I'll call the next evening. That gives the person a chance to sleep, get to the hotel, get some rest, get something to eat, make contact with any support services or family members or whatever that they have, and use the day productively. I don't want to call them. I've tried to call people at 1 p.m. Oh, I'm shopping at Walmart. Thanks for calling, but I'm doing fine. Great, but wait until they get home. They've relaxed a little bit. The day is done. If I call them and they are still in that overwhelmed state, I haven't done anything, or very little, or they don't know what to do, then they really need that call. That's what DMH is for. So when I'm calling, looking at two things. If you think about clients as being a graph, and on the x-axis is stress, low, medium, high. On the y-axis is recovery behaviors, low, medium, high. I'm trying and I've got a standard questionnaire that I begin to use with every client. There's a core outline that I have of questions, and then based on the CAS information, I'll supplement that to just confirm what people have or don't have in the way of connections. And what I'm really trying to do in that first few minutes is open-ended question, just as Mark said, how are you holding up? And if they're not doing well, they'll be happy to tell you that, And typically I say I'm a counselor. The DAT team wanted me to do a wellness check and follow up and see how you're doing after such a horrible loss, a horrible experience. How are you? How are your family doing? And they'll tell you. And if it's high, the stress is what I first listen for. If that's high, I try to bring it down, because if they're still in stress while I'm talking to them, I can't really begin to ask them or assess what kind of recovery behaviors they're doing, where they are on that recovery scale. So I'm basically trying to do two things: get the stress down and get the recovery behaviors, or at least planning, intentionality in place, so that they can see, oh yeah, well, a caseworker is going to be following up with you, and they'll be in Chicago. I really have to say one of the big differences between Chicago and Arizona is that caseworkers generally beat me to the punch in Arizona. In Chicago, it's later. We're instructed to get to the client DMH within the first 24 hours. When they're really at most upset, and if they don't have support, they really need it then. And we're instructed to say, a caseworker will be calling you in the next couple of days. I sometimes will ask them again to switch into recovery mode after their stress is down a little bit. What are you worried about most right now? If it's housing, then I can start to talk, I'll literally do some sort of casework stuff, give them some housing referrals that I know we have in Chicago that they would be giving. And then note that in my CAS notes as well, so that when the caseworker does pick up and start reading it, they can say, okay, yeah, let me just double check. Did they follow up on those referrals? As Mark said, one of the type of people that are really vulnerable, let me just get to my notes because he touched on it. And here's this interesting thing. What you might find interesting statistically, at least in my experience, most of the clients you refer do not need mental health services by the time I reach them. Recovery has taken place. Even though you may see them and it's a perfect referral, they want somebody to do the follow-up wellness check with them. By the time I get to them, by the time they've had a chance to sleep, the kids are taken care of, family has come to support them. Small towns, everybody rallies around folks in small towns. I've just found that true in Illinois, Arizona, unlike the big city, right? If all of that has happened, oh yeah, I was feeling bad then, but I'm doing okay now under the circumstances, that sort of thing. So that's the one thing that happens. And so I know if people are really want to talk at that point, if they're still stressed out, they do need DMH. Well, the second thing is, many of those people who do need DMH They're ready to talk, but they also have had counseling experience either currently or in the past. So to Mark's point, they have had issues dealing with stress in their lives over time, and they have had a positive experience in dealing with a counselor. And sometimes it's a matter of, almost 9 times out of 10, I'll say, well, have you ever tried counseling before? Oh yeah, I have a counselor, right now. Well, when's the next time you're supposed to see him? Let's say it's Saturday. Well, I'm supposed to see him Tuesday. Please do me a favor, give them a call right now and let them know that you're in crisis. You've really had a crisis, and you just want to let them know that. And they may be able to help in the next couple of days before your scheduled appointment. So the folks that do want DMH have had DMH very often. Again, sometimes if they haven't and they're looking for help, to Mark's point, a lot of times parents will call, parents of small kids, adolescents. They're worried really more about their kids. If it's a first-time stress experience like this for the family, what should I be looking for with my children? Had a couple great referrals like that this past summer in Phoenix. Or if it's a teenager, I can't communicate with my kid anymore, but I'm worried. What should I be looking? What should I do? What you start doing there is really asking about if the kid has developed any mentoring relationships with coaches, teachers, youth pastors, somebody else that, well, geez, hey, why don't you have the youth pastor, or why don't you have the coach? Has the coach called you? Oh yeah, he's already called, or the school's already called. Why don't you ask the teacher or the coach to give him a call and see how things are going, and begin to really get him reoriented, and listening to somebody that he has credibility now in his life. Let me see. Oh, I'm done with my comments, but before I turn it back, I just want to leave you with a quick story about this search and rescue, search and recovery. This was with, let me get it right. I want to get the timing here. Oh yeah, it was 2 weekends ago at a state park south of Chicago. 2 young fathers drowned in a river while their families were watching on shore. These were Chinese immigrants with limited English. I spent 3 days with the family, but I came away with 3 clear memories that I'm sure you hear after every DAT call if you're in the field. And I'm bringing this up because we haven't been in the field as much. When I put on my Red Cross vest, the Chinese clients had clear, positive expectations. The first responders, when they saw that vest, they had clear, positive expectations. And this was a state park, but it was near a neighborhood residential area by a walking path that was heavily used. When I wasn't with the clients, either walking to or from the car with the vest on, or walking back from a little conference I had with the first responders, those neighbors who offered to help and bring folding chairs or water, when they saw that vest, they had clear expectations, and they were positive, they were grateful. Hey, Red Cross, thank you. All I want to say is it wasn't me that they were thanking. It was really you guys who are in the field shift after shift, really making that Red Cross experience such a powerful one. So I just wanted to pass on that even though we've not been in the field as much for the past 6 months, those positive responses from clients, from first responders, from the public in general, it's alive and well. So that's it.
It's a beautiful sentiment. Thank you so much for saying that. I do have 2 questions I want to follow up with you on. One was, you mentioned before that to help prepare you for a call, you read through the case narrative notes and really familiarize yourself with the family. One thing that I want to see if we have to be cautious about anything as far as what we can put into the narrative, because with health services, it's pretty cut and dry what we can and can't put in there.
Right.
But what about mental health? It ends up being a little bit more ambiguous. What sort of things do you think is okay, and what should we steer clear of?
Yeah, again, just steer clear of labels. As Mark said, it's behaviors that you're concerned about. I do want to point out one thing in terms of a cheat sheet and scripting yourself and preparing yourself for that conversation with the client. I want to call your attention to moving forward, the moving forward handout. on the very last page of that handout is taking care of your emotional health after a disaster. And what you may be feeling now, I'll just read from these. These are things that, again, I think they echo exactly what Mark was talking about, but they're right there in black and white. So if you're not sure what you're hearing, you can scan through this and see if this is really what you're hearing with a client. Feeling physically, mentally drained, having difficulty making decisions or staying focused on topic. Frustration occurring more quickly and more often. Arguing more with family and friends, feeling tired, sad, numb, lonely, worried, experiencing changes in appetite or sleep patterns. One thing I would add to that, community family support not apparent. Whether it's right there on the scene if you're DAT, or whether it's a couple days later, or a day later or two if you're a caseworker. If those are the behaviors you're seeing, you can really then use that as one of your fill in the blanks to build on what Mark said. I'm listening to what you're saying, and here's what I'm hearing. Is this kind of what you're feeling right now? And if they say yes, they acknowledge that, then you could say, I'm really concerned, and I really want to make sure that we can work together with you and help you overcome these feelings that you're having as well, because the Red Cross does that. And then make the suggestion about a counselor following up. And I, again, couch it generally in terms of a wellness check. If you do it like that, the people that may sort of take offense, wellness check is a common term. People always hear about wellness checks being performed by first responders after emergencies. They do it themselves with family and friends after issues, after deaths, that sort of thing. So stay away from the labels. I always talk about stress reactions, and use that in my write-ups. Severe stress reactions, PFA, using PFA. In dealing with the stress reactions. So now sometimes I'll actually get a call, more so from Arizona than from Chicago DAT or caseworkers, saying, off the record, yada yada, some kind of additional mental health, substance abuse, who knows what. Very often noting of a physical disability, making the person impaired, physically impaired, an impairment condition that they wouldn't necessarily want to write in, or mental impairment, educationally mentally handicapped, that sort of a thing. Instead of putting that in, they'll mention he seems to be kind of a slow learner, or needing a little bit more direction. But I'll actually get a call sometimes from the worker for those kinds of things, which is great, because then it informs me and I'm a little bit more prepared. I can keep that, I write that down, and that's one of the things I'll begin to check. I won't be pressing too much for, how you're feeling and how long has it been if the person, has trouble processing. I just had a call, had a Springfield, Illinois fire, a 51-year-old fellow lost his partner of only really just a year or two. And I called him. We're doing ICCT interventions now remotely. So I called him. He said, no, I'm doing okay. I'm surrounded by my family. I've got her family. I'm contacting them. I said, great. I said, do you have, do you think you might have a need for counseling? He said, yeah, maybe. And I said, have you ever had counseling before? Turns out he had with a local family service agency when it was also doing substance abuse. And so I said, you know what, right away, could he relapse based on unaddressed stress on top of everything else and trying to rebuild and recover? So I went on the internet while we were talking, got the name and address of the agency and texted it to him and said, feel free to give them a call. Well, guess what? A week later, he called back to the Red Cross and wanted to talk to me. And so I called him and have you called that agency? No, something came up with one of my adult daughters. And so, okay, here's another set of stresses for him. But generally speaking, he was still doing well. When I called him last week, he was I was interrupting him he was ready to sit down with a meal Saturday night with his family. So I said, no, please, go ahead. I'll call you back on Sunday. Called him on Sunday. He told me exactly what he had to eat the last night. Got some rest. He's still at work. But again, I wanted to encourage him to, use that phone, call those guys if you're having some stress. Even ask him to call you once a week or so, as again, kind of a wellness check. But he's that sort of a guy. Between now and the end of the holiday season, people just kind of touching base with him in a more professional way to focus on his needs and his multiple kinds of issues potentially.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing. We're running close on time, so I'm going to abandon the second question I had, but we have a few people that have some questions for you guys. Chris, I see your hand up.
Yes. Hi. Quick question. In our training initially, we were told that if there was a pet that was killed in a fire, as an example, that we automatically made a referral to DMH. And my quick question is that the right thing to do? And should that be done before the initial casework contact is made?
I'll answer that. Yeah, that was one of I had some additional anticipated questions. Who are the high stress, low recovery clients? Who are the potential DMH referrals? And certainly, in a nutshell, it boils down to who are the most vulnerable. Most vulnerable physically, financially, emotionally, and survivors of the fire involving death of a person or an animal. That's the most extreme acute stress, and it never hurts to offer that. And people are generally willing to accept that phone call. But yeah, that will definitely, that's almost an automatic. If I see that in the cast notes, then I say, okay, that's the reason for the referral. They may have other family members in the picture. There may be other stuff going on. But another example of a woman who was living in a two-story apartment building in Chicago, and she was the landlord, and she had a tenant, and the fire happened, and both of them were left homeless. I wound up following up with her. She was actually at work the next day, and I called her at her lunch hour, and she said, yeah, everything's going well. I called the insurance company. I've got someplace for the tenant to live, yada, yada. And then I said, I'm really sorry for the loss of your pet. And that's where she started to really kind of lose it a little bit. So I'm glad I called her at lunchtime. But yeah, it really, nobody had addressed that with her at that up until then. And she was, full charge. Let's get back in gear and let's take care of all these other things. But so it's very worthwhile to do that. And obviously it never hurts in that most acute time to let people know that you feel their sympathy, and if they want to talk about that, spend a few minutes in terms of grief counseling and sort of steps that might take place, sort of experiences and feelings they might have as a part of this grief.
Just a quick comment on that. I think we do need to be careful about sort of saying automatically that some event would trigger a DMH referral. I think it really depends on the person's reaction. There are some people that consider pets their family members, and other people maybe don't. So I think we still have to assess the meaning or the impact that it has on that individual.
Yeah, I know I have run into a few clients that were animal hoarders and didn't seem to value that life as much as we would automatically prioritize. So I think there is something to said about those 3 R's, but still, as soon as you become aware of it, make sure to make a point to address it, ask about it.
Yeah. Those extreme acute losses, that's, big time.
Now, especially since you're bringing this up, Chris, all of those major risk factors, all those acute losses, all those things that can really impact somebody's recovery, if you haven't done so already, make sure that you're reviewing your territory's referrals, resources to see if this came up in one of your cases, how would you address it? Pets is something that is very, very important to a lot of people's recovery, and something that, you know, a lot of clients don't automatically know where they're going to go to turn to it, especially in the loss of a pet. For those of you that aren't aware, they're like, obviously if a human passes away, there's a process for that. There's the funeral, they go to the morgue, they get cleaned up. There's a lot of agencies that automatically reach out to provide that condolence and kind of help segue that transition. In the loss of a pet, it's not so cut and dry. And I know all over Arizona, and I believe all in New Mexico as well, when there's a loss of a pet and the fire department finds the body, they'll just leave it out on the side of the curb, and the trash collector is the one that actually picks up and disposes of the body. So, you know, if you haven't had that conversation with your local territory about, you know, what are the resources available for loss of pet, after this meeting, I strongly urge you to have that conversation with your territory and remind them what those referrals are. I can tell out here in Central Arizona, we have Arizona Humane Society and Companion Pets in Crisis that will go and collect those bodies and ask them, you know, how do you want us to process this? They'll, you know, they could cremate it and give them the ashes back, or help provide them a little tiny box or casket, animal casket sort of thing. So definitely have those conversations. Joe, I see you have a question.
Yeah, not more of a comment than a question. The idea of continuous monitoring, Mark and Ron both spoke at length about this, although they didn't call it continuous monitoring. If I'm on a DAT call, if I was, I don't do it anymore, but I've been doing this for 15 years, and somebody seems okay, I have to go and look at what their situation is at the time, because right now they could be high on adrenaline, endorphins, things that their body does to make them get past this point. But I know that later on that's going to go away, and that just because they say they're fine now, well, I know that, for instance, a relative or a pet or somebody died in the fire, and they're saying they're fine now, I have to assume that it's very likely they're going to crash. And so continuous monitoring, both by the DAT team and by the caseworkers, even though it doesn't say DMH was referred, you got to look at the situation and say, hey, on an ongoing basis, let me just sense and see if that person or that family might now, at this point, need it.
I think that's a really good point. And I go back to what Ron said earlier about sort of a delay that you have. You know, you mentioned something about 18 to 22 hours before you make that call. Because I found that too. There's often a delayed response to a crisis. You know, that adrenaline flows and you're doing this and you're doing that, and then it hits later. So important point. Thanks for that, Joe.
All right. Any last minute questions, comments, concerns, emotional outbursts? I think this is probably the best time if you have an emotional outburst. We have a great guest speaker that might be able to help us.
I just have a quick follow-up on you talking about notes before. No emotional outburst, but I think it's really a key thing about that caseworkers, whoever writing notes, that there's something in there about the personality or the reaction of the client. I think a lot of times, you know, that people are under pressure to kind of get things done or see a lot of people and do a lot of things. But I think it's important to include some information about the response of that client, that whether it's an emotional response or comments that they made. That helps us as caseworkers and DMH to assess where we're going to go from there.
Yeah, I just add one comment. Legal terminology or things that would trigger legal action by mandated reporters, such as suspected spousal abuse or whatever. You may see things in a family situation that are not directly the result of the fire or the incident. And it was there before you got there, and it'll be there after you get there, or not. But had an experience where the case note said of a fire, suspected spousal abuse. And I thought at that point, okay, I'm a mandated reporter. Now I had to really check that out empirically and try to verify as much of that when I was calling the person. It turns out, you know, it was not an accurate characterization. It was the judgment of the person. But by using that term, we spent a lot of time, and actually my DMH manager had a meeting like this to remind everybody, don't use those kinds of terms. So yeah, just, you know, you're really talking about what is the suffering this person is experiencing, what's the stress they're experiencing, what are the recovery behaviors they need to do that we're recommending for them, and, you know, are they picking up on that? Are they moving forward?
Good point.
Really glad that you brought up the mandatory reporting status that you have. I wish that we had time to go more into that and kind of expand on that concept. I think we have time for one last question, then we do have to move forward with the final points on the agenda. Betty, you have the question?
Actually, it was an observation, and I'm glad that he, I think it's Ron, made that comment about be careful how you say things, because I had a conversation with Paul Ellis as chaplain, and how we refer to things can be ambiguous at best. So if something happens, and also being in in a county situation, whereas it may not be a pet, but if the little sow that some little girl is taking care of, she may be doing that for Future Farmers of America or 4-H, and that means a great deal. She's lost a lot if that gets killed, and you know, if it dies. So there's a lot of things that when you're in certain areas you have to be aware of. And out here in Arizona, it's cultural things, either Spanish, Indian, Black, and reservation talk. There are certain things you can say about reservations and whatnot, and certain things you can't. And there's certain things you can do. You just don't go riding around on the reservation trying to find something, because you won't, et cetera and so forth. So I wanted to thank you for bringing up several of the points that you've made today, and let you know I truly appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Absolutely, Ron. Thank you so much for joining us and giving such great elucidation to the DMH side, how it looks on that end of our services. You've been a wonderful insight today. And Mark, thank you so much for everything that you've been able to speak on, helping lift the same experiences we all as caseworkers are having, and giving us your insight on best practices as well. So with that, we're going to move forward with the rest of the agenda topics and kind of try to wrap things up as quick as possible. I don't want to keep you all too long. Chris, I understand you're taking over for Flo during her vacation, and actually, Flo, you're on the line as well, I think. I thought. Oh, yes, you are. Do you want to kind of share what that transition is going to look like and what we can expect?
Well, I'll take it from Flo. She kind of passed the reins to me because she's going off RVing for the next few weeks, which is great. and she's asked if I'll kind of fill her shoes, which is a very tough thing to do, but Flo, I'm going to do the best I can. But essentially, casework is going on as normal. And as you all know, you've seen in the press, you've seen on social media, all of the fires that are happening on the West Coast, the hurricanes, Laura, Sally, that's about to hit in the Gulf Coast area. There has been a tremendous need for people to deploy. In fact, you may have gotten a call yesterday in the central Arizona, or I guess you're all out of Arizona in our territories. We have done a call down, checking every disaster volunteer's availability to deploy, either in person or virtually. So you may have gotten a call or should have gotten a call or a text or an email to check on that. So one thing I would encourage you to do, even if you did not get a call, please go into your profile and update your availability. And there's 2 places in your profile. Make sure when you do, go into the disaster cycle services section, and it says manage your disaster availability, and put in the dates that you could deploy, either physically in person or virtually. And if I can just address that one thing, specifically for caseworkers, there's been a lot of questions. Are we sending anyone out who is a caseworker? And the answer is no, we are not physically sending any caseworkers out at this time. However, we will need, once the surge, and because folks are being put up in hotels as much as we can, our traditional casework that we would do on a large DR is not happening. But very soon they will be going through a shelter residence transition period. And that's where we're going to need virtual caseworkers, even if you're not trained in that. Flo did offer a special training on that a few weeks ago. Even if you are not able to attend that, and if you are available to work virtually, you can put your availability in. You'll be contacted when we're ready to start shelter residence transition. And the first day of that training or the first day of your deployment will be the shelter residence transition training. So please, if you haven't done it, go into Volunteer Connection as soon as this call's over. Go into your home disaster cycle services and update your availability. Other than that, keep on trucking, as they say.
I do want to add just one thing to that. If you do get deployed, the deployment team doesn't always notify all of your activity supervisors. So let us know. Let your immediate supervisor for your territory, your coordinator, or if you are a coordinator being deployed, notify Chris. That way we can make sure that coverage still happens for your area and that the clients are being cared for. You deserve to go out and take a vacation. You deserve to go out and deploy and get those experiences. We just want to make sure that the clients are still being cared for, and we can just move workloads around. Betty, do you have another comment, or is that your hand just up from before?
No, I actually was, when she was saying that we were called, and I said that I could virtually deploy, but because of my age and physical, I can't go into a fire zone and move like, scuttle out of the way of something. I can't lift heavy. So I told her I could do virtual, and I was told, no, they're not doing virtual. So she actually answered that.
Yeah, not virtual. Right now, the call down that happened this past weekend was for shelter workers, and the shelter workers are going out in person, but casework would be virtual.
They didn't say anything about shelter work. They just said, can you deploy? And I said, I can do virtual, but I can't go on site. I'm not going into a situation that I have to haul ass and it'll be burnt before I got it moved.
Sorry for the confusion. Yeah, it was specifically for shelter, and I think that's where the miscommunication came around. But I did see that, Betty, for you specifically, whoever spoke to, I think it was Karen, she did update your availability and specifically said virtual. So, and you already have your casework gap. So when the time comes that they are asking for caseworkers, they'll see your availability, they'll see your gap as caseworker, and they'll still contact you if you're needed.
Oh, thank you. I was just going to go in there and do that. So.
Jacob, it's Flo. Chris, thank you so much. Just what you just said put me in vacation mode. I feel like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. Yay. And the other thing, I just wanted to remind everybody that no matter how many catastrophes we have around the country, that our most important mission is DAT response. And as long as there is a Red Cross, we will be following up, we will be responding to house fires, and recovery will be following up with those clients. So don't everybody go. We have to hold enough people back to make sure that we take care of that important mission. That's all I have to say.
Excellent, thank you. So any questions with that transition before we get to the final little topic with RC Care? Hearing none. All right, so I have a video that I was going to share with everyone. This was actually a video that was shared on our all volunteer call. I think it was last week. I don't know. Time is feeling very weird right now. I'm going to post the link into the chat box. This talk just does an intake demonstration about how the DAT is going to be operating with the new RC Care system, what it's going to look like, and you'll get a sneak peek as caseworkers what that screen for how we're going to be interacting with clients will look like, and some of the feedback there. If I'm going to go through a few of the updates. The video is about 13 minutes long, and if you guys want to stay online, I'm going to stop the recording before I press play for those that are watching this recording after the meeting. But you can stay longer than the hour if you would like, so that we can watch this together, or you can go ahead and end the video, but or end the meeting. So with RC Care, I've mentioned before that Aunt Bertha is going to be integrated with the system itself. Kind of like how CAS right now, it does have a referral system. It's not the very best. It's kind of hard to find exactly what you're looking for. And Aunt Bertha is much better at sharing what sort of resources are available. You can search by zip code and by category of assistance. And it even gives you links to the website. It gives a really good description, all the eligibility requirements and contact information. Aunt Bertha is wonderful. And we all have our own territory resources that we use. It's either in CAS already, or it's just something that we've created our own list for how we give referrals to clients. Maybe you as a caseworker, you have your own list. Maybe you haven't shared that with the rest of your territory. I definitely encourage you to share if you have a resource that you rely on. Definitely share that with your territory so that everyone else benefits from it as well. But last month, we did a push to update Aunt Bertha with all those resources that we use across the region most frequently. That wasn't in there already. And this is going to be an ongoing effort. Aunt Bertha is a third party that Red Cross has contracted with, and they have people that are paid to research community agencies and research what sort of resources are available to people during times of disaster and update their list. But they are just people. They're not going to be perfect. They're not going to be omniscient and non-knowing. So the more eyes we have out there and the more information we can feed them, the better that resource is going to be for us. So I'm going to share my screen, and I want us to revisit Aunt Bertha. I want to show you how you, as just a general person, can submit a program for them to add to their database. So I've submitted everything already that you guys have given me, but if you are ever using OnBertha, let me go into the Red Cross version. Again, I'll put this into the chat box. You should already have this, and you should be using this with your standard casework, but if not, there's the link. I recommend bookmarking it. So here is the link, and you'll notice if you use the Red Cross OnBertha one, it also gives you updates about current disasters that we're facing, even the virtual family assistance for coronavirus. Well, let's look up, I'm just using the Central Arizona chapter address zip code. Here it is. Down here at the bottom, look, I'm not even logged in right now. This is just the general website. I don't have any special permissions. I do have an account, but really I haven't noticed too much differences in having an account and not having one. So there's no use of signing up for this. But down here at the bottom, you see it says suggest program. Go ahead and click that. And I'm just going to type in the information that we have. You put it in, you say where it's at, you put the phone number for it and a link to the website. And then you would just, you would search it for, okay, so let's do food service. We're doing, oh no, I have to do St. Vincent de Paul. I'm going to new case or follow-up. I'm 555 stvincent.org. So you have to search for it. Make sure that it's not already in OnBertha. And then if it's not, you'll tell them more, give them the description, and suggest it. A OnBertha worker will go in, review the program, and they will send you an this one. Yep, your email. They will send you an email once they reviewed it and tell you the results. Like either they'll say, oh, we already had that, it was under this listing, or they'll say, you know, this was a great referral. We have updated OnBertha to include that. So this is one way that you'll be able to make sure that your whole territory or region has access to those referrals as well. Once RC Care is launched, this is what we'll be using for all of our referrals. Any questions with that? Hearing none.
So this
again,
Steve, you don't want me sending you my list of things to add to SharePoint and Aunt Bertha, right? You want me to do it myself?
You still can send it to me until this is really, you can either upload it yourself if you want that practice. You can give it to me and I'll still give them another, I'll start collecting another round to give to the OnBertha people. But once RC Care has been launched, then it will be up to each territory to, once they find a new resource, to put it in themselves.
Got it.
Good question. Any other questions? Hearing none.
Yes.
So I'm going to go ahead and end the recording. But like I said, I'm going to play a video for you all. You can either choose to stay for the video, or you can go ahead and move on with your day. Stop sharing and stop the recording.